Good evening, Blue Jay Nation. It is wonderful to be with you. This is Mark Clapper, class of 1996 and Executive Director of College Engagement at Etown. And I am so happy. I am so honored. I'm so excited to share with you this evening our guest, our Blue Jay feature, Bryn Davis, class of 2009. He has been described as an innovator, a visionary, just a very keen business acumen. Someone who is really talented at being an entrepreneur. Just a really, really exciting leader, and so excited that he's with us this evening. Bryn Davis is a member of the class of 2009, and he graduated from Etown with a business administration marketing degree. And he has a very, very great, interesting, inspiring story. And it has some roots at Etown, which is fantastic. But he founded and then served as Chief Executive Officer of Bryn Danes Healthy Fast Food. Actually, Bryn Danes Global is the official name. And he served in that capacity for more than a decade. And he has now started to do some really, really exciting things based on the foundation that he was able to build with Bryn Danes. So it's so exciting. We're going to hear all about it tonight, which is fantastic. And just he has a vision that for serving healthy fast food to the masses, but yet doing it in responsible ways, in new and innovative ways, both domestically and internationally. And there's a really exciting vision for what's coming next. And so it is without any more hesitation, without a doubt, I'm so excited to share with you Bryn Davis, class of 2009. Bryn, thanks so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so great. We've talked about this for a little while now, and it's so awesome that the stars have aligned that we're able to bring this session together. And Bryn, you're inspiring. That's all I'll have to say. I'll start this off by saying that. Like, I personally feel very inspired by you, and I'm really excited that our alumni network is going to get this closer look at you and all the things that you've done, but more importantly, the things that you have a vision for doing in the future.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we talked about how you are a member of the class of 2009, and I have to say I have a very special connection with your class. I feel a very special connection with your class. I was an advisor for your class for all 4 years.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it was the first time I was an advisor, and just a really, really cool connection with all 09ers. In fact, the phrase "there's nothing finer than an 09er" was something that just kept floating all around and around and around. And you and I, are blessed to have some of the same, special people in our lives, some similar friends and things like that. In fact, one of your friends was the first one to introduce me to Bryn Danes, and that was Jake Keeler.
No,
And
yep.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, he and I worked together in the Office of Alumni Relations at Etown, and I remember the one day he's like, "You know what?" He said, "Do you know Bryn?" And I said, "I know of Bryn." And he said, "But do you really know? Because he's doing this Bryn Danes thing, and it is just so cool." And he told me about it, and then it was like I couldn't get enough, learning about kind of how it was formed and how you started, all of those things. So really cool kind of people in our lives as well. Some people that are just really special. So
Absolutely. Jake's a special dude. And in my opinion, Jake, for a million reasons, embodies Etown a ton. And I think was why I was drawn to Etown, not him specifically, but I mean, him specifically too, but people like him. And I don't think you find people like that in many other places.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And actually, that brings a point. So let's start with Etown. Your experience at Etown. So you found your way into business marketing.
Yep.
Was that something that you knew when you first came in, that business marketing was what you wanted to do? Or did you kind of did that awaken in you while you were at Etown?
No, so I knew in high school more or less that I wanted to start a brand or start something creative that other people looked at, let's say, right?
Mhm.
And I actually started off at Temple and didn't come to Etown until my final 2 years, right? So I went to Temple. I ended up interning for Disney. I went back for one more semester at Temple, and then I got over to Etown. And I think before I got to Etown, things were super hectic, right? There's a million things going on, and I think that Etown came at the right place at the right time for me in a million different ways. It kind of slowed everything down. I was around, like I brought up before, just amazing people, smaller classes. I loved that experience, especially at that time in my life. It was like it was almost like a Pleasantville. Everything kind of slowed down for a moment and I was able to focus. And at that point, I think I was able to think about more clearly what I wanted to do next. And I knew I did want to play in that fast food world and change the way people looked at it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it about E-Town that drew you there? You know, you talk about things kind of, life kind of slowing down and giving you, an opportunity to focus, which is actually a theme that we'll touch on a little bit later on. But what was it specifically about E-Town that drew you there?
It's going to sound redundant, but I'm going to stick with it anyway. I mean, again, you could go and look at like, what the values are and what the mission is and all of that. But if I really break it down, I truthfully think it's just the quality of people when I got there. Everybody brings up like the carrot cake and all of that, but that is great marketing, by the way. It was unbelievable, right? I still remember it distinctly. But the quality of people from the students, which was probably the biggest effect once you're there, but the quality of the faculty and the people like you that are involved before you get there, especially when you're working in admissions, I'm sure. But that isn't just something you find anywhere else. The only other place I found it was when I worked for Disney. It was a very similar experience, to believe it or not.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who were some of those people? If you were to think through your E-Town experience, could be faculty, could be staff, could be students. Maybe it was an alum or two. But who stands out to you as really important during your years at E-Town?
I think when I got there, it was bizarre actually. When I was at Disney, my roommates were Bryn, Bryn, Brett, and a guy named Jose. And then I moved to E-Town and I moved in with a Jeremy and a Jeremy. It was like uncanny. It's unbelievable the chances of that, right? But my whole life, including now, I always go up and down in weight. It's always been like that, right? But I think probably the most focused again I ever was, because again, when you go to somewhere I think like E-Town, all of the distractions were kind of pulled away. And when I was there and I was focused, I kind of clung to the wrestling team. My roommate was a wrestler. My best friend that transferred there, I didn't meet him until I was there, but at E-Town, he was a wrestler too. And I kind of worked myself into their group. We worked out together, we ate together, we did all those things. And I think that group was super strong to me. And again, I had just a million friends. I felt like it was the community at E-Town was way different than any other place I've ever been.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. And what's cool about that is that you're not the only one who feels that way. I mean, I think that's something that's a point of differentiation for E-Town when you think about it as an institution. And it's so cool to kind of hear that echoed from you. So yeah. So how about faculty? Who stands out to you? You were in business, so I imagine you spent a lot of time in the Hoover Center.
I did. And I took probably enough courses at Temple to be a poli-sci minor.
Yeah.
And the two teachers that do stick out the most were Professor Greenberg, who's in the marketing. Is he in the marketing department still, or?
He is.
Yeah. I mean, I think about him on a daily basis because we used to break down. I'm looking actually over my computer screen. There's a TV that's not on, I promise. I swear to God. But he used to break down just regular commercials, and I find myself still doing that on a daily basis. And I think about him literally probably almost every day because I catch myself doing that. But then the other guy, I can never remember his name. And I think he was like a political or philosophy teacher, but he had dogs with the real long ears.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
He was like the grumpiest, nicest man I've ever met. Like the grumpiest exterior, but if you scratch just a little beyond that exterior, he's a puppy. He was a cupcake rather. But he had the dogs with the really big ears. But I was there for 2 years. I had a bunch of great teachers.
Yeah.
The quality of students around me was really was transformative and life changing. Without a doubt, it was life changing.
That's very cool. That's
Yeah.
so neat to hear you say that. Yeah. And so, looking back, obviously we have a different perspective when we're able to look back on something versus when we're in the thick of it. But was there something, you had mentioned about the values, the motto, educate for service is the motto of Etown, as you know. And
Yeah.
was that something that was kind of present in your mind when you were at Etown, or was that something that was just kind of, absorbed by you being there? Like, were you conscious of that, or?
Yeah, I think I was, and I'm not just saying that because obviously I went there.
Yeah.
The one thing that intrigued me, and I had a high school that had a kind of a similar mission, but the whole leave to serve, I think, not to get too deep into it, but I think right now in the economy that's happening and the economy that's going to come after this with the people that are even younger, I don't see any, I don't see many businesses popping up that aren't doing so, that aren't going to also have to do social good, right? So even 10 years ago or whatever it was now, 11 years ago, 12 years ago when I was in college, I knew that I thought that if I did start a brand, we could create it and so that it also did a tremendous amount of good while still being driven by capital, because I think that is a strong motivator, and I think it's something that's relatively healthy for a brand or for a company. But I always wanted to fix it, and it was kind of a combination, really. I was at Etown, or maybe it just finished, and I had watched a commercial for Tom's shoes. It was an AT&T commercial, and it was the buy a pair, give a pair. And that was a moment that kind of blew my mind. And ironically, full circle, Blake, the founder of Tom's, ended up becoming an investor in Bryn Danes.
That's fantastic.
So it all did come full circle. But that kind of, I think the environment that Etown has, combined with some ideas like having a business where you can give things, those two together were really strong for me.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Yeah. So what are your favorite memories from Etown? Like, what's something where it's like, oh man, that was really cool, or if I could go back, I would do that again.
Yeah, I mean, I did. So so back then I used to work out all the time, and I know they still have the gym that's downstairs by the kind of, wait, now I'm losing perspective of where everything is.
Yeah.
I think it's
the BJ Body Shop is what it was called.
Yeah, downstairs,
Yeah.
and they had the person right by the check-in right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back then, I went there all the time. I would play basketball all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my buddies like Corey Brown, Jeremy Heisey, all these guys that I used to hang out with nonstop. It usually was based around a lot of physical activity.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know, for some reason at Etown, I was able to live probably in the last, I'm 36, in the past 20 years, whatever it is, that's the most balanced lifestyle I ever had.
Oh, cool.
So that I really do think it was. I don't know if it was because of the curriculum or the people or maybe just me, but it was the most fun, studious, healthy I've probably ever been.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and I have to say that it's really cool to retrace your steps and think through. So you graduated from Etown.
Yep.
And you have this vision, and what then? Like, how did there's a really great story of how you got started, and I'd love for you to just kind of walk us through that a little bit. I mean, it's really one of these things where it's like you're willing to do what it takes, and it started out kind of as a family support system for you. So, walk us through those post Etown months and years.
Yeah. So real quick, not to get too far into it, but at the time I was dating a girl at Etown, and she had introduced me to her uncle, right? And at this point in time, I had already developed a little bit of the Bryn Danes concept, and I knew what I wanted to do, and the stars kind of aligned. And I met an individual who ultimately wanted to invest maybe $400,000 into the concept. We started to develop it more, start rolling, start getting excited, etc. And I can tell you, and it sounds dramatic, but I can tell you, it was the day that Washington Mutual Bank fell. So I think it was like 2007, 2008, 2009, something like that. And it was the first like mainstream economic indicator that things were going to go really bad. I went to their house to have a meeting like we had every week. And I remember they were both actually wearing black, which I'm sure was a coincidence, but it did make it feel like even sadder than it actually was. I remember going in and I'm saying, more or less, like, we love you. They're great human beings. but they said like, we love you, but we can't put any money into the market right now. We have to wait a couple years. And I remember that kind of crashed my dream a little bit. I didn't know what to do. So, I started reading, and I read a ton and started reading about people who had made a lot from little, et cetera. And what I ended up doing was I reached out to a guy named Pat Croce. He used to own the Sixers. And I asked him what to do. And what's interesting about that is back then he was kind of like the Mark Cuban before Mark Cuban, right? So to get his attention was rather difficult. But by getting that and talking to him, he essentially had said, start smaller, right? And start with as small of a concept as you possibly can, and then build it and keep it as your own, right? So what we did was I ended up going back and writing my grandfather a letter and saying, if I work on your farm for a year, will you give me a small sum of capital? It was like $12,000 and pay me along the way. And I'll start my dream with that money. And we started up a little stand that sold smoothies and just popcorn, and ran with it. We opened with $12,000. We started off doing a couple $100 a day in revenue. I saved it, bought some kitchen equipment, added that in, put food in, started doing a couple $1,000s a day, moved down the street, and then we started to replicate. And that was crazy. That was like, probably from the age of like 25 to 31. We went pretty quickly. We opened up in Horsham. We did a short little one term down the shore, and then we came back. We did, ultimately by the end, had 5 locations, and we were opening up our 6th with number 7th and 8th in development. So we were moving.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where Bryn and Danes went for the last 10 years. We went on a wild roller coaster ride.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really exciting to watch it all happen too. I mean, it's like, wow, you're getting support, you're getting investors, you've got a vision, you're opening locations. I mean, there are all of these things that just seem to be clicking for you. And on top of that, you've got people who are going to your place and they're saying, this is great food. This is really tasty. This is something that, I can get around what they're doing here. And I think your story with Bryn and Danes started resonating, and it kind of goes back to that lesson with Tom's Shoes, that if there's something more than just a smoothie, something more than just a healthy menu, it has the ability to endear people to your brand. And so you're kind of clicking along, and at one point I remember reading an article where you kind of indicated that expansion was one of the things that you were really thinking about with Bryn and Danes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, not to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Totally. And I think there's not a thing that's changed about our mission whatsoever.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that because of 2020, and we can maybe talk about that in a second, I think that there's some avenues that we're going to take that might even accelerate our growth a little bit faster than we originally intended. But I think what you said kind of nailed it. And I don't want to jump ahead too far, but you said that, you talked about the mission and our story, et cetera, with the Bryn and Danes brand and the food being great and all of that. But I do think that for Bryn and Danes, we were a brand that was driven by our story and our mission and our expansion, et cetera. We were the expansion of an idea, and that was an amazing run, and it was exceptional. I think in the transition of what we're going to talk about in a second into FUDI and what we're becoming, we're maintaining that story because it's the same narrative that follows through, right? It's all my life. It's what's happened since I left Etown. And I think that at its core is remaining the same. I think what we're adding to the brand are things that we think are now relevant and what we want to be and what we stand for the next 10, 20, 30 years. But again, I think like you said, what is cool about Bryn and Danes and what was cool about Bryn and Danes is it was very tied to my personal narrative, our story, and a mission of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a really cool quotation from you that I think still resonates very well, and that's healthy eating is remarkably inconvenient, or something along those lines that you had said. Like, it's really hard to eat well, and you really built Bryn and Danes into something that addressed that.
Yeah, so when we started, it was really addressing people who either wanted to maintain a healthy lifestyle, or a lot of times, especially when we began, it's people who are looking to lose weight. And it's still a lot of people who are looking to lose weight. And to say that it's remarkably, inconvenient, that's what it was. I remember when I was in my younger 20s going through, a local convenience store, whether near Pennsylvania, if it's a Sheetz or a Wawa or whatever, and reading and kind of scrutinizing the back of each nutrition label and finding the one or two things you could eat in that store.
Yeah.
My dream was to take all of the thinking out of it and open locations where people could kind of once again pick based off flavor, right? And not have to worry about what's in it. And all that continues through, what we did with Bryn and Danes and what we're doing in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And that kind of brings us to, so you're clicking along, things are going really well, and then 2020 comes and the pandemic comes, and things in many respects, I mean, the stories, the narratives of the effect that the pandemic has had on businesses, you can really read them pretty much everywhere, and a lot of it is gloom and doom.
Yeah.
But I think one of the many reasons why I feel so inspired by you is how you met that challenge and what you did with it. So take us into 2020.
Yeah, so it gave me chills, not because of us, because of the way that you said it, because it brings up something huge to me that I know everybody, this isn't a quote by me by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one that we use every day. And it's the one that we brought up last year at this time. When is it, January? It's like about when people were starting to make decisions about maybe next month. And it was chaos. I mean, the market was chaos. Everything was just chaos in that time. And I turned to my brother and I said, there's got to be opportunity in this. There's got to be something that we can salvage from all of this. While everybody's panicking, let's just remain calm as long as we can. And, to give you the full story of kind of what happened and where we are now and why I think it's a beautiful thing is, with Bryn and Danes, like I said, we became a brand that was raising money. We had a crazy high valuation. We had a lot of strong partners, et cetera, et cetera. And when that happens, that's great because generally speaking, you're funded and you have a board of directors that's very intelligent. And again, generally speaking, everybody's an incredible person that's done well in their life and all of that. But when we got to the end of last year, the end of 2019 rather, we did have a little bit of investor turmoil, right? Some people were unhappy. It's not worth getting into. When the new year hit and we saw that the next year was going to be rough, you have to remember when we have 5 locations open, one in construction and 2 in development, that means that a lot of money has to be put into the market in a really scary year. And they decided not to do that, and things kind of trickled backwards. And, they weren't willing to put out money for the next year to see Bryn and Danes through. So we came to the agreement that I could start anew with, a concept that I could still pay all my liabilities and pay all the bills, all that. I've really embraced this idea that for years, we'd always talked about what's the next thing in the market that's coming. When we started, it was healthy fast food. That still sticks out to me, and we still are healthy fast food, right? But that moniker, that was great, and that stuck out in the marketplace, right? But if I look at what the market's doing now, even within our stores or nationally, or what I project to be happening over the next 10 years, or what even my beliefs are, we decided that in this year, let's recreate ourselves, right? Let's really attach ourselves to what we believe in and then move forward. And the two things that we really decided to latch ourselves onto, obviously, we're going 100% plant-based, and we brought in some of the best chefs in the city and worked with some of the best chefs in the country to take our products and make them exceptional. And then number 2 is, like you said earlier when we talked I guess it was not when we were on here, when you and I were talking yesterday, is what we're going to do to help areas that are in food deserts or that have food insecurity. What can FUDI do to help those locations? And I think that's an interesting component about our brand as well. So that's what FUDI is. And on February 25th of this month, we'll be opening up 5 locations on 2 continents in one day. So we'll be opening up a full fast food location, which is behind me in this photo right here. We'll be opening up a market. We'll be opening up FUDI in Horsham, FUDI in Plymouth Meeting, and we'll do our first ghost kitchen in Center City. So we'll have 5 locations by the end of the month that we're super excited about.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, it's really fantastic how you take something that is just chaos and you pause and you take that as an opportunity to focus and then come out of it stronger and more centered. And that's just a phenomenal lesson. And it's so cool to see it playing out like this. I'd love to show you have a video, and it's a pretty inspiring video too. So I think now's probably as good a time as any to show this. So let's cue it up.
Sounds good.
And emergency legislation shuttered businesses across the province. Restaurants and the people who run them and work in them were among the hardest hit.
We're seeing the demise of our favorite restaurants.
That many restaurants may not survive the next few months.
At the beginning of 2020, really, we were faced with two options. First, we could panic, stick our heads in the sand, and hopefully wait for this whole thing to blow over. Or we could take this time to completely reinvent ourselves, to boil down to our values, and then truly live by them. We decided to take that second option, and since then, our journey has profoundly changed. So we knew that it was time to let our names fade into the background as individuals, and instead push our brand's mentality and spirit to the forefront. I guess more directly, it was time to bring our true brainchild to the world, FUDI. FUDI is a food concept ecosystem that I had been brainstorming for the past several years. It's a brand that's defined by its values. It's as easy to say whether you're in Philadelphia, Entebbe, Argentina, or anywhere else in the world. It was obvious to me that we needed to make two critical changes to our model in order to directly impact the fast food industry. First, it's time to go entirely plant-based. FUDI will not sell any meat or products that derive from animals. Simply put, it's time to make this adjustment. We've been charting this transition for the past several years and have used this time to convert our locations into entirely humane spaces that are free of any animal products. Maybe even more excitingly, we were blessed to collaborate with some of the most amazing and acclaimed chefs in the country to put together a menu that is simpler and has more flavor than anything the plant-based or regular fast food world has ever seen. Second, we had always known we were different because we just valued things differently. We measured things differently. We were never as drawn to profits as we were to our mission to change the way the world eats. As we begin again, we realized we want to do something profound. We want to do something that's never happened in our industry. We want to do something the world's never seen before. We decided, let's give the restaurants away. We realized it was time to give our platform to communities in need that dealt with things like food scarcity and food insecurity, or that were in food deserts. Let me get this out of the way. We are not the saviors here. We don't want the ownership. We don't want any money. We don't want the credit. We're driven by the idea that we can build a network of like-minded people who can make a difference in our food ecosystem. At its core, we just believe in two words: opportunity and access, which this food platform provides. FUDI is here to punch traditional fast food in the face, and I say that because I feel as though they've taken advantage of the world for too long. From things like contributing to a national obesity epidemic, being notorious for low wages, relying on factory farming, and ignoring the effects that practices like this have on the environment, to really just being an embarrassment for this country. Fast food has needed an answer, and that answer is FUDI. To our thousands and thousands of supporters and fans, you are our largest blessing. We love you, and our evolution would not and will not be possible without your continued support. Thank you so much for everything, Bryn.
You notice though in that video, there were a couple of those were at grand openings, and there was Etown alumni at every grand opening that I wasn't even friends with necessarily, they weren't necessarily my friends, but at every grand opening, Etown alumni show up, which is notable, and I'm not just plugging that. At every grand opening, even people that I'm not close to, I don't even know their first name, they still come out for the grand opening, which is special. No one does that from my high school or anything like that.
It's awesome. That's awesome. You know, and it's exciting, but at the same time, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, it's just a weird group of people in a good way.
Yeah, it's the Blue Jay Nation. It's a family, you know, and I think I think the same could be said for for, those who work at the college. I mean, I think in many ways, if you're part of Etown, it gets in your blood and it stays that way, and you feel a connection. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to say, Bryn, that video, there's so much in that. And I think for, just going through the transition to where you are now. I mean, you're talking about moving to a plant-based menu, and you're talking about the reasons why you're moving to a plant-based menu. And I think a lot of people, when they hear that, they think, oh my gosh, what does that mean in terms of the types of food that are going to be available at FUDI. So I'm curious, give us a little insight into what your video talks about. Chefs and really bringing out flavor and the health and wellness aspect, but tell us about FUDI. Like, what can you expect if you go to a FUDI?
So two things, the number one thing, I guess, even to get out of the way, is for me, it's important that FUDI is not a location for just vegans or people who follow a plant-based diet, right? I want people who just want to have a plant-based meal to come in to try us out, right? Not somebody who doesn't eat meat ever necessarily, but somewhere we're approachable enough as an option just to come for anybody, right? I think there's two things that made me really want to do this, right? I do think that logically we're seeing less people eat meat, right? In our own restaurants. That's objective. So I think that route is one reason we wanted to. Another kind of like startling thing, and I'm being honest with you, we were sitting down with our food rep, and again, we're in the middle of a crisis where like the restaurants aren't even like allowed to be open. No one can eat in here. It's like has to be slow legally. It has to be slow. And we were talking about chicken, and we had gone through like 130,000 pounds of chicken in 1 month. And conceptually, I just couldn't wrap my head around how many animals that had to be. And I'm not a bleeding heart, anything right now, but the truth is my thoughts stopped there. And I just thought, how cool would it be if we opened up like we've always wanted to and didn't hurt anything? Because I think we could rally the best chefs and come up with a menu that's even better than if we had animal meat or animal products on it, right? So that was kind of line of thinking. It wasn't some, big, bleeding heart kind of mission. It was more numbers wise. I don't think this makes sense. Can we get a great group of people to make a dope menu that they like even better than what we're offering now? And my bet is two things. Is number one is, like you said earlier, I think people are coming because of the mission and because of what we're trying to do. And they believe that we're actually doing it for the right reason. So I'm betting on that. And then number two is the cheat for us is 50% of our menu is frozen drinks. There hasn't been any dairy in them since day one.
Yeah.
So 50% of our menu stays exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that part is nice.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and I think, what you're seeing in the marketplace is you're seeing even like the big chains dip their toes into plant-based options. So you've got McDonald's that's coming out with a plant-based burger, and there was the Burger King had a vegetable-based Whopper, and there are lots of places that are starting to kind of dip their toe in this. For what reasons, that's not for us to go through right now, but I think what you're doing is you're being, at least from my perspective, you're being very aware of market shift, but you're also being very aware of what impact you're having around the world, to our world, to the place where we live. And related to the video and your background, you have this connection with Entebbe, and for those of you who don't know, it's in Uganda, and Bryn, you've had kind of a special connection with Entebbe for a while. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm only laughing because explaining to most of my guys over there that we're going that it's 100% plant-based is not an easy conversation, but we're going to kick butt over there, especially due to the frozen drink section. So to answer your question about Entebbe, truth is I went over there on a humanitarian trip probably 5 years ago now, 6 years ago, I don't even remember. And I truthfully fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the people. It's like Etown. I'm not saying the people are like Etown, although they kind of are, but it's the same kind of feeling. It was again, in my life, working at Disney Special, I had Etown, my own companies, but then also being in Entebbe. But I fell in love with that city. And I knew that I wanted Bryn Danes or whatever brand I ever ended up being to do something profound in areas that only needed opportunity, not me to be a savior and come in, but for me to be able to plant a seed real fast and then let them run with it, right? The only area that at that point in time that I thought I could make a profound difference would be a place like Entebbe. I couldn't afford to make a difference in the States just yet in a way that I wanted to, right? So we used Entebbe as our first really international project. And we'll open up over there on February 25th with our other 2 locations. But what's cool is in the way that we've looked at this brand, and again, I think this is a product of 2020, is especially in fast food, if you looked at the progression of the way things always go in fast food, it's consistency, right? Whether it's the burger or the building, it's the same thing over and over again all across the world. And they've done it well because there's 32,000 restaurants. So how could you possibly argue with them, right? So you can't knock them. But for us, I think, especially with FUDI now, where we're a little bit different and it's kind of me back in the saddle a bit, I think it's much more project-based. And we look at, first of all, yes, we're opening up in Entebbe. We're opening up a ghost kitchen in Center City, like I mentioned. But when we open up that ghost kitchen in Center City, we're also going to have a delivery service to North Philadelphia to give essential items to. So we'll be helping out in the community in that way. And I do think, although it's not the traditional way of thinking, and I'm sure there's a lot of Etown professors that would smack me over the head, but I do think if we're going to go after this the natural way, and if it's really going to be a reflection of us, and it's when I say us, it's me and a bunch of interns. It's a bunch of projects that we're passionate about, and we're going to see which ones really work and which ones don't. Like, for example, and then I'll be done. I was over there last time, and this is another kind of chilling moment, but I was walking through, I was with my buddy Fenny, and over there, it's not as developed, so they don't have like slaughter big houses so much as they have slaughter fields. And I walked through one, and it was pretty chilling. Long story short, I ended up buying 2 goats. It was a mother and a daughter. I couldn't think that they were going to die, so I bought them. We ended up putting them in a little plot of land. That plot of land's now grown, and we're going to turn it into a goat sanctuary that's funded by some of the action over here. That's one of the fun projects for me that isn't as linear as let's open another restaurant, but how fun is it if we can get a few hundred goats that just get to hang out in style for the rest of their lives and not have to worry about being eaten or anything, not even milk, just let them chill. Yeah. So, I mean, it's that kind of fun stuff, and maybe we can grow our own coffee there. I think we're kind of, until this is all relaxed, we're going to embrace the art of it, see what works, and then run with it.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's very cool, and it just seems like you're very good at noticing things and being aware, and kind of then thinking about opportunity. Almost what we were talking about earlier with the pandemic. Kind of taking the time to be aware and then thinking through, what could become of what might not be at this moment, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I'll tell you 2 things real fast. I mean, for us, I can give you an example for us, right? The ghost kitchen world is very interesting. If you're not familiar with them, it's delivery only concepts in highly dense areas, right? Take your big cities, you go into a warehouse, you hardly pay any rent, but you can pump out delivery, right? Mm-hmm. Now for us, we've partnered with somebody super exceptional. I don't want to get into it just yet, but we've partnered with somebody who will be able to pop around pretty quickly. And that'll be our main vein of growth. I don't think that would have happened had 2020 not happened, because I think delivery really was pushed in 2020, and a lot of things that were developing became realities faster, if that makes any sense, right? So the idea of a ghost kitchen, yeah, we've always thought, when I say we, I just mean people in the industry. What if we only did delivery? You didn't have to deal with all these issues. We've been talking about that forever, right? I've only been in the game for 10 years. That's always been the thought. Well, now it's a reality. And that might have not happened if for a year people weren't home. What I would also say is, like, and this is not a plug for my company, but because everybody's had to shed everything. I mean, every restaurant, especially if you could look for cool restaurant startups or food startups or other kind of startups like that, everybody is shed down to nothing. I mean, nothing, right? So I've leaned on and paid, but and that's kind of the upside now. It's weird because you kind of need to pay somebody, but you can't pay salaries. I mean, the internships that we've given out, are invaluable, I would really objectively say, in terms of learning how a small business works. So if anybody's watching this or this is used for anything, I think right now interning, especially if you're able or in a position to do it for very little, I mean, I think everybody's hiring for that kind of role. I think that's the opportunity right now.
Yeah. Well, and it speaks to, one of the other things that we were talking about when we were connecting yesterday. Your video is phenomenal.
Mhm.
How did you end up getting that video?
I'll tell you what. So weird. I can guarantee you, I put myself in the most odd scenarios out of any person you've ever, usually on purpose to see what happens. But sometimes I just find myself there. And this one, I didn't even think about it until it happened. I watched a video online that a kid did that I liked. He was like 20 or 21. I guess he was like 21, 22. I contacted him. I said, I'm going to Uganda and I need a video done. He said, I've never been to Africa. If you just buy my ticket, I'll do your video for free. I said, and I can never even tell you his name now, because then after that, so he was like this 21-year-old kid that I knew had crazy video skills. Since then, he's worked with like Nike, Lululemon, everybody wants this guy. But he honored this deal from the first trip to Africa. Again, I won't say his name, even though I should, because he's such an amazing person, exceptional person. But he said he's honored that deal where for both videos, now I'm not going to use them again because I really don't want to waste, but is that if I bought his plane ticket, he'd do our video. So our first two big videos were done by the same guy. But now he's like a 25-year-old man who lives in Hawaii with his, I don't know what, his fiance, girlfriend, whatever. But it all started with this 21-year-old kid. I remember his mom, I think, being like tentative about him going and me not understanding. Well, now I get it. He was just like a baby that I took over. But anyway,
Yeah.
It was a wild ride.
Well, and it connects to your point though before that. If people are willing to work to get experience, there are lots of opportunities for that.
Oh man, so like I remember I worked for Disney, and I'm a huge Disney fan. More of a Walt Disney. I'm just like the company, the brand, how it works, whatever. So I interned at Disney for $6 an hour. That's when I lived with all the Bryans and the Jose guy. And when I got there, I wrote letters handwritten to all the executives that work there. That's like Michael Eisner when he was there, Lee Cockrell, I forget the other guy's name, whatever. Lee ran Walt Disney World. He was like the CEO of Walt Disney World. Anyway, because of writing that letter, I did become friends with Lee Cockrell. And to this day, we touch base. And I think if you're gritty, even if you don't know what you want to do, you can still stack your contacts. Stack your people, and Lee is not a contact and he's not an asset. I genuinely love that guy. He's a great man. But what I'm saying is getting your web of people ready for whatever you want to do, I think is super, super enormous. I mean, I remember when I was little, my mom used to make me caddy, and I still have those connections of like golfers that I caddied for when I was like 14 years old. Yeah. So anyway, I think having a big Rolodex is nice because someday you're going to need it.
Yeah. Well, and there's so many great pearls of wisdom in what you just said, the grit to do the little things. Little things are big things if you're willing to do them. And that's handwritten notes. It's being grateful, expressing, thanks for opportunity or just for the ability to listen to somebody. Like little things like that. So helpful, and those are pearls that we share at Etown with students, but when you hear it from somebody such as yourself, they become amplified. And so really appreciate you sharing those those nuggets of wisdom there. It's pretty awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So now FUDI and, the brand, the rebrand, the launch, you're going to be opening things this month.
Yep. Later
this month. You are somebody who works all the time. You've got your head. It seems like it's going, all the time. You're processing, you're thinking, those kinds of things. So as you're doing those things, what's next? Like, what do you see? Roll out big thing. But where do you see it going from there for FUDI? You talked about areas of food deserts. You've talked about, areas where there's food insecurity. You want to have a presence there. You want to meet a need there. Mm-hmm. But, kind of how do you see this unfolding?
Yeah, so I see if we're talking like straight up business strategy, what I see happening with us is I really want to master and dedicate a lot of time into perfecting this ghost kitchen model, right? I think that's going to be a really cool way for us to grow. What's really cool about it too is because since you're growing in cities, you can A, serve the city, and B, give to the city at the same time. So I love that model a lot, and I see us expanding quickly. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised within 30 days if we didn't have a signed contract on the West Coast to start over there. So that kind of filling in with some brick and mortar, I see them sprinkling in, only because it's a lot of overhead, they're expensive. But when we do that, I see that happening in the American Southeast, call it your Louisiana through Florida, up through North Carolina. That's kind of an untapped area, I think, in kind of trendy food in terms of the fast casual space. We're working now, which, you know, maybe at Etown could be something, but a lot of the school, it's a lot of these mega big schools. We're doing college containers. So we have conversations with like Aaron, Mark, and Sodexo talking about putting containers, college containers, where we do all of our beverages and espresso on the campus itself. I can see us doing, I'm looking over because I have our whole agenda above you. I have maybe 1 or 2 of those this year. Then overseas, this year, I just want to focus on our market doing well and our fast food location doing well. We just bought or I just put down money for a lease on a coffee house as well. And with that coffee house, the dream is to kind of perfect our Ugandan coffee. And my real dream is to have it so that we can allow it for people to come and sell their locally grown coffee to us per pound, and us to have a true local community roast that we then sell here in the States. So we have a ton of stuff like that we're working on this year. And the truth is, it's more of if people are watching this that have in the business field, if you look at like what Virgin Records did, right? Virgin kind of puts their name on 50 million things. I think at one point he had like 200 different concepts, and then sees what work and runs with those. My brain works better that way than really being disciplined on one thing. The hope is that we can make one thing be a slam dunk and I can hand it off to someone who runs it really well.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. No, that's exciting. And I have to say, we've gotten some comments from audience members, and, you know, there are everything from, you know, can't wait for the ghost kitchen to open in Center City, I'm hungry, to, you know, really proud of you, Bryn, to, you know, large menu, meal prep, plant-based is so badly needed. Like, just affirmations of things that, you know, kind of the directions that you're going, which is really awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I like the idea that you're thinking about with colleges and universities as well. You know, perhaps there's an opportunity with Etown in that somewhere, but just really, really excited at all of the different ideas that you're, you know, kind of percolating in your head, the things that you're thinking about hatching. You know, I think you also have an affirmation that you're brilliant and you should run classes. Cool.
No, yeah, I think like leaving it on, it's kind of interesting. If you look at it this way, if you look at kind of happened in the music space, I know this sounds kind of out there, but there was a big hesitancy to, you know, when people were selling music to then giving it away and then figuring out other ways to leverage ways to make money if you did in fact give away the music itself, right? And to me, although brick and mortar is totally different and I totally get it, to me, I'm much more excited about the idea that food is expanding and the spirit of food is expanding. That's really where the idea of giving it away makes sense. If someone can be a good steward of the brand, to me, I'd give it to you. I'm down. I don't need the money either. I would just want it to prove that it works over and over again. So, you know, whether that's in the US and in an odd circumstance, or whether it's in India, or whether it's in Africa, or whether it's in South America, it's not a money play for us ever. It's more of a, you know, will it work? Will it do what we want it to do, which is, you know, create, you know, serve and do all those things? And if so, then we'll write the deal. So anyway, I just wanted to end on that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I just want to say that, you know, again, just hearing your story, hearing your vision, hearing how you've been able to you know, turn something that is, you know, inherently challenging into something that could really be transformational and inspirational and innovative is really, really awesome. And, you know, I just want to applaud you again for being able to look beyond the challenges and see opportunities. It's a really, really awesome quality about you.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, Etown's very proud of you. I think you're somebody that the college, is really, kind of acknowledges as a rising star or an existing star or,
First, I appreciate it, but second, I used to be a rising star. Now I think I'm just 36, and it's not that cool anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, like now it's not cool if I do cool stuff. It was cool when I was like 26 and doing cool stuff. It was awesome. Now, now I'm just normal, I think. But no,
I don't know. I mean, I think
really appreciate it, man. Etown, I'll be honest. It's like the experience of being there. It's been special. Etown's been special after I left. And I think that's weird too. A lot of times when you leave a college, I don't even know if I ever even got, I shouldn't say this because maybe now I will, but I've never even received anything I've received nothing but immense support from Etown since I left. And it's been just as special after I left as when I was there. Just a unique place. And I truthfully am not saying that because we're talking, you and I are talking.
Yeah.
If I were talking to somebody that wasn't even from Etown, it would be hard to explain that little 2.5-year period, 3-year period of my life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I do want to just say too that, just as a symbol of how much, Etown is just proud of you, excited about you, for our audience out there, Bryn received the Distinguished Graduate of the Last Decade Award in 2019. And, it really is a symbol of, just all that we have been talking about, but also what's yet to come, and you received that award actually in front of the whole graduating senior class of 2019. That was a special night, really inspirational. A lot of students they're alumni now, a lot of alumni remarked about that evening. It's like, wow, like it was just so cool to know that within 10 years he was doing that kind of stuff. So I just offer that to you as yet another affirmation that you're doing some really phenomenal things, Bryn. We're really proud of you.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as an alum, you're somebody who, we can see the Etown pride in you, and, you're part of Blue Jay Nation, and, there's always a place for you at Etown, without question. Home is always home, and you always have a place there. So, so absolutely. Thank you so much for this evening.
Thank you so much. That means a ton. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And to everybody who's watching, we really appreciate that you have been with us on this journey. And, we're excited to support Bryn in whatever ways we can. It is in fact a FUDI future if we're looking at it in that way. So Bryn, thank you so much again for your time this evening, and wish you nothing but the best in
thank you.
Everything that's going on this month, everything that's it's a big month, and and we're behind you. And I just also want to say to our audience, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We actually have a series. This is part of a series. This is our second event, in Etown Alumni Features series. We had one last week. We have Bryn this week, and we're going to be having more of these throughout the semester. So keep your eyes peeled on etownalumni.com/events. And if there are any past events, we did these all last fall as well. We had a feature series. We had an alumni concert series as well, where there were some alums who played their original music. And we have a Meet the Professors series as well. So, lots of content for you. And you can check out the recordings of those, including this one once we're finished, at etownalumni.com/virtual recaps. And for our alums, we will be having our next event. It's coming up on the 18th. It's a Etown Alumni Trivia Night, and really a blast. It's just a time to kick back and enjoy some time together with fellow Blue Jays and friends. So that's available on etownalumni.com as well. So Bryn, again, really appreciate you, brother. And
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. And to all of our audience out there, I am Mark Clapper. And remember, we are Blue Jays always.
Thank you so
have
much.
a great evening.